I made my mistake when I tried to tell you about Skipper. That's where I made my
Maggie.
error. I never should have confessed.
Maggie, now you shut up about Skipper. I mean it. You...
Completely superficial, immoral. There's the person that my family know.
You gotta shut up about Skipper.
I'm gonna say this, and I don't care if it's in front of them.
No, I'm not plugging any.
And the other Elizabeth Taylor, the commodity.
I have nothing to sell. I really wanted to come on the show and thank you for 30 years of brilliant entertainment.
One is flesh and blood, and one is cellophane.
Hollywood's biggest stars took a secret about President Kennedy to her grave. Well, almost her grave. Elizabeth Taylor, the woman with those famous purple eyes who married 8 times and lived one of the most dramatic lives in Hollywood history, finally opened up about something she had kept hidden for decades. Her connection to John F. Kennedy wasn't just another Hollywood friendship. It was something much deeper, much more complicated, and something that made Jackie Kennedy incredibly jealous. Before Elizabeth Taylor died in 2011, she finally decided to tell the truth about what really happened between her and the President of the United States. The story she revealed was shocking, romantic, and completely changed how we think about both of these legendary figures. So grab a snack and settle in, because today we're diving deep into Elizabeth Taylor's most closely guarded secret. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just any actress. She was a force of nature who started acting when she was just 9 years old. Can you imagine being famous at 9? Most kids that age are worried about homework and playground drama. But Elizabeth was already signing contracts with movie studios. Her big break came with a movie called National Velvet, where she played a girl who disguised herself as a boy to race horses. That movie made her famous across America, and suddenly everyone knew about the little girl with the most beautiful violet eyes anyone had ever seen. But growing up famous isn't easy, and Elizabeth's childhood was far from normal. She was surrounded by adults all the time, working long hours on movie sets, and missing out on regular kid stuff like sleepovers and school dances. Maybe that's why she always seemed older than her age, more mature and serious than other kids her age. By the time she was a teenager, Elizabeth Taylor had become one of the most recognized faces in the world. The thing about Elizabeth was that she never did anything halfway. When she loved completely. When she was angry, everyone knew it. When she was happy, she lit up every room she entered. This intensity would follow her through her entire life, including her relationships with some of the most powerful men in the world. Now, let's talk about how Elizabeth first met John F. Kennedy. This wasn't some glamorous Hollywood party meeting like you might expect. Elizabeth actually met JFK when she was just a child visiting London with her family. Kennedy was already a young politician then, charming and handsome, but nobody could have predicted that he would one day become president. And certainly nobody could have imagined that this little girl with violet eyes would grow up to capture his attention in a way that would make his wife furious. Years passed, and both Elizabeth and Kennedy became incredibly famous in their own ways. She became Hollywood royalty, starring in movies that made millions of people fall in love with her. He became a war hero and then a politician, climbing his way up to the highest office in America. When they met again as adults, the chemistry was immediate and undeniable. By this time, Elizabeth was already known for her complicated love life. She had been married multiple times, and each marriage had been front-page news. Her first marriage was to Conrad Hilton Jr., the heir to the Hilton Hotel fortune, when she was just 18 years old. Can you imagine getting married at 18? The marriage was a disaster from the start. Hilton was abusive and had drinking problems, and Elizabeth quickly realized she had made a terrible mistake. They divorced after just 8 months, and Elizabeth learned her first hard lesson about love and marriage. Her second marriage was to British actor Michael Wilding, who was 20 years older than her. Elizabeth was looking for stability and someone who could take care of her, but their relationship felt more like friendship than passionate love. They had 2 sons together, but as Elizabeth grew up and became more confident in her career, they grew apart. Wilding's career was struggling while Elizabeth's was soaring, and the marriage couldn't survive the pressure. Then came Mike Todd, a flashy producer who swept Elizabeth off her feet. Their marriage was passionate and dramatic, exactly the kind of love story Elizabeth had always dreamed of. Todd treated her like a queen, throwing lavish parties and showering her with expensive gifts. They had a daughter together, and for a while, Elizabeth thought she had found her happily ever after. But tragedy struck when Todd was killed in a plane crash, leaving Elizabeth heartbroken and devastated. It was during this dark period in her life that Elizabeth's friendship with John F. Kennedy deepened into something more complicated. Kennedy had become a senator and was preparing to run for president. He was married to the elegant Jackie Kennedy, but that didn't stop him from pursuing other women. And Elizabeth Taylor, grieving and vulnerable after losing the love of her life, was drawn to Kennedy's charm and power. According to Elizabeth's own later confessions, Kennedy would invite her to private meetings whenever he was in Los Angeles. They would meet at fancy hotels or at friends' houses, always away from the public eye. Elizabeth described these meetings as intimate conversations where they talked about everything from politics to personal dreams. Kennedy was fascinated by Elizabeth's intelligence and passion for social causes, while she was attracted to his vision for America and his incredible charisma. But here's where things get really interesting. Elizabeth always insisted that their relationship was purely emotional and never became physical. She said they were just very close friends who understood each other in a way that few people could. Kennedy was dealing with the pressure of running the country, while Elizabeth was dealing with the pressure of being one of the world's most famous women. They found comfort in each other's company. However, not everyone believed Elizabeth's version of events. Jackie Kennedy certainly didn't believe it. According to people who knew the Kennedy family, Jackie was incredibly jealous of Elizabeth's relationship with her husband. She saw how Kennedy's eyes would light up when Elizabeth's name was mentioned. She noticed how he would always find excuses to visit Los Angeles, where Elizabeth lived. Jackie might have been one of the most elegant and composed women in America, but when it came to Elizabeth Taylor, she was just like any other wife worried about her husband's wandering eye. The tension between Jackie and Elizabeth was so obvious that people in their social circle started talking about it. Some friends said that Jackie would become cold and distant whenever Elizabeth was around. Others said that Jackie would deliberately schedule events or trips to keep Kennedy busy whenever she knew Elizabeth was going to be in Washington. It was like a sophisticated game of cat and mouse, with Jackie trying to protect her marriage and Elizabeth trying to maintain her friendship with the president. Elizabeth later admitted that she could feel Jackie's hostility, but she insisted that Jackie had nothing to worry about. She said that her relationship with Kennedy was based on mutual respect and intellectual connection, not physical attraction. But when you're talking about two of the most charismatic and attractive people of their time, it's easy to understand why Jackie would be concerned. During this period, Elizabeth was married to Eddie Fisher, a popular singer who had left his wife Debbie Reynolds to be with Elizabeth. This caused a huge scandal at the time, because Debbie Reynolds was considered America's sweetheart, and people were furious with Elizabeth for stealing her friend's husband. The public turned against Elizabeth, calling her a home wrecker and worse. But Elizabeth didn't seem to care about public opinion. She followed her heart, even when it led her into trouble. The marriage to Fisher was troubled from the beginning. Fisher had problems with drugs and alcohol, and he wasn't faithful to Elizabeth. She was lonely and unhappy, which might explain why her friendship with Kennedy became so important to her during this time. Kennedy represented everything that Fisher wasn't: powerful, intelligent, dedicated to something bigger than himself. Elizabeth would later describe Kennedy as one of the most fascinating men she ever met. She said he had a way of making her feel like the most important person in the room, even when they were surrounded by other powerful and famous people. He would ask her opinion about political issues and actually listen to her answers. He treated her like an equal, not just a pretty face or a Hollywood decoration. But their friendship had to be kept secret. Kennedy was the President of the United States, and Elizabeth was a controversial figure because of her multiple marriages and scandalous reputation. If the public had known about their close relationship, it would have been political suicide for Kennedy and even more negative publicity for Elizabeth. They met in secret, often late at night or in private rooms away from cameras and reporters. Elizabeth described these meetings as some of the most meaningful conversations of her life. They would talk for hours about everything from world events to personal struggles. Kennedy would tell her about the pressures of being president, and she would share her experiences dealing with fame and public scrutiny. According to Elizabeth, Kennedy once told her that being president was the loneliest job in the world. Everyone wanted something from him, and it was hard to know who his real friends were. Elizabeth understood this feeling completely, because being a famous actress had taught her that many people only wanted to be around her because of her fame and money. Their connection was based on this shared understanding of what it meant to live in the public while trying to maintain some sense of privacy and authenticity. Both of them were performing roles constantly. Kennedy as the confident president, Elizabeth as the glamorous movie star. But when they were together, they could drop these masks and just be themselves. Elizabeth also revealed that Kennedy was incredibly funny and charming in private. The serious politician that Americans saw on television was just one side of his personality. With friends, he was relaxed, witty, and full of stories about his political adventures. Elizabeth said he could make her laugh until her sides hurt, and she treasured these moments of joy during what was otherwise a difficult period in her life. But all good things must come to an end, and Elizabeth's secret friendship with Kennedy was no exception. As Kennedy's presidency progressed and the political climate became more intense, their meetings became more risky and less frequent. Kennedy was dealing with major crises like the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Civil Rights Movement, and he couldn't afford to be associated with any scandals. Elizabeth understood this, but it didn't make it any less painful. She had found a true friend and confidant in Kennedy, and losing that connection left her feeling more isolated than ever. She threw herself into her work and eventually began the famous love affair with Richard Burton that would dominate the rest of her life. The affair with Burton began while Elizabeth was filming Cleopatra in Rome. Burton was a Welsh actor known for his incredible voice and magnetic personality. He was also married, which didn't stop either of them from falling passionately in love. Their affair caused an even bigger scandal than Elizabeth's relationship with Eddie Fisher, because Burton was respected as a serious AC. Not just another Hollywood playboy. Elizabeth and Burton's love story was legendary in its intensity. They fought as passionately as they loved, throwing things at each other one day and buying each other expensive jewelry the next. Burton once bought Elizabeth a famous diamond that was so large it had its own name. They married each other twice, divorced twice, and remained obsessed with each other until Burton's death. But even during her passionate relationship with Burton, Elizabeth never forgot about Kennedy. She followed his presidency closely, celebrating his successes and mourning his struggles. When Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas in 1963, Elizabeth was devastated. She had lost not just a president, but a dear friend who had understood her in a way that few people ever had. Elizabeth kept her grief private because she couldn't publicly mourn Kennedy without raising questions about their relationship. She couldn't attend his funeral or send flowers, or do any of the things that normal friends do when someone they care about dies. She had to suffer in silence, carrying her memories of their friendship alone. For decades after Kennedy's death, Elizabeth refused to talk about their relationship. Reporters asked her about it constantly, but she would either deny that they had any special connection or change the subject. She was protecting Kennedy's memory and reputation, even though he was no longer alive to be hurt by any revelations. But as Elizabeth got older and her own health began to fail, she started to reconsider her silence. She began to think that maybe the world deserved to know the truth about their friendship. Maybe it was time to set the record straight and honor the memory of a relationship that had meant so much to her. In her final years, Elizabeth began opening up to close friends and biographers about her relationship with Kennedy. She was careful to emphasize that their connection had been emotional and intellectual, not physical. She wanted people to understand that what they had shared was deeper than a typical Hollywood affair. It was a meeting of two extraordinary minds who found comfort and understanding in each other during difficult times. Elizabeth also revealed how much Jackie Kennedy's jealousy had hurt her. She said she had never intended to threaten the Kennedy marriage or cause Jackie any pain. She genuinely respected Jackie and understood why she would be protective of her husband. But Elizabeth also felt that Jackie had misunderstood the nature of her relationship with the president. According to Elizabeth, she once tried to reassure Jackie that she had no romantic designs on Kennedy. She suggested that they meet for lunch to clear the air and hopefully become friends. But Jackie refused, apparently convinced that Elizabeth was lying about the true nature of her relationship with the president. This rejection hurt Elizabeth deeply, because she had hoped that two intelligent women could work out their differences. Elizabeth's final confession about Kennedy came near the end of her life, when she was confined to a wheelchair and battling serious health problems. She was staying at her home in Bel Air, surrounded by nurses and close friends, when she decided it was finally time to tell the complete truth about her relationship with the 35th President of the United States. Tez, she called in a trusted friend and biographer and spent several days recounting her memories of Kennedy. She spoke about their late-night conversations, his sense of humor, his worries about the country, and the genuine affection they had shared. She wanted the world to know that John F. Kennedy had been more than just a politician to her. He had been a true friend during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Elizabeth also expressed regret that she and Kennedy had never had the chance to maintain their friendship openly. She wondered what might have happened if circumstances had been different, if he hadn't been president and she hadn't been such a controversial figure. Maybe they could have been lifelong friends, supporting each other through the challenges that both of them faced. But Elizabeth was also proud of the discretion she had shown throughout the decades. She had protected Kennedy's reputation and memory, even when it meant enduring years of speculation and rumors about their relationship. She had put his needs and his family's needs ahead of her own desire to set the record straight. When Elizabeth Taylor died in March 2011, she took many secrets with her. But her final confession about John F. Kennedy gave the world a glimpse into a relationship that had been one of the most meaningful of her life. It was a story of two extraordinary people who found connection and understanding in each other, despite the enormous pressures and expectations that surrounded them both. The revelation of Elizabeth's true relationship with Kennedy changed how many people viewed both of these iconic figures. It showed Kennedy as more than just a political leader, but as a man who valued intelligence and genuine connection over superficial celebrity. It showed Elizabeth as more than just a glamorous actress, but as a woman capable of deep emotional bonds and remarkable discretion. Looking back at Elizabeth Taylor's incredible life, her relationship with John F. Kennedy stands out as one of the most poignant chapters. It was a connection that brought her comfort during dark times, challenged her intellectually, and ultimately taught her about the complexities of love, friendship, and loyalty. Her decision to finally share this story showed the same courage and authenticity that had defined her entire remarkable life. Oh, there you have it. The secret that Elizabeth Taylor carried for nearly 50 years. A story of friendship, jealousy, political pressure, and ultimately, the power of genuine human connection. It's a reminder that even the most famous people in the world need friends who understand them, and that sometimes the most meaningful relationships are the ones that must be kept private. What do you think about Elizabeth Taylor's confession? Do you believe that her relationship with Kennedy was really just friendship, or do you think there was more to the story? Was Jackie Kennedy right to be jealous, or was she overreacting to an innocent friendship? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed learning about this incredible piece of Hollywood and political history, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories about the secret lives of celebrities and historical figures. Trust me, there are plenty more shocking revelations where this came from, and you won't want to miss a single one.